Hey Fight fans, I'm Sarah Davis and you're watching Fight News Now Extra. Up next, we're bringing you the hottest headlines from the MMA world, including another fight announcement. Then we'll hear from our analysts, John Ramdeen and Robin Black, so stay with us as we get started with the Newsmakers. UFC light heavyweight Dan Henderson says that if the opportunity arises, he would definitely take a fight against his training partner and friend, Chael Henderson slated to face Lyoto Machida at UFC 157 in a possible #1 contenders bout, while Sonnen takes on champion John Jones at the end of April at UFC 159. A source close to UFC women's bantamweight champion Ronda Rousey says that Rousey signed a 6-fight contract with the promotion, not an 8-fight contract, which was earlier reported. According to the source, a shorter contract will give Rousey more leverage if her star continues to rise. And we'll see thunder and lightning clash at UFC on Fuel TV 8 in Japan when Okami meets former Bellator champion Hector Lombard in the cage. Okami most recently earned a victory over Alan Belcher in December, while Lombard stopped Rousimar Palhares last month. Those are the latest headlines from the MMA world. Let's hear from our panel, John Ramdeen and Robin Black. And guys, what are the chances we actually see Henderson and Sonnen fight?
Well, you know what? I think there is a very good chance because these guys are business guys. They've been in mixed martial arts for a long time, and it's not as if they spend time training together right now. We know that Chael Sonnen is up in Oregon at Team Quest with Matt Lindland, Dan Henderson in Temecula, California with his team. And we know a couple of years ago, actually, they tried to sue each other for the name. So it all comes down to business, and if good business means that these guys have to meet in the cage, I think this fight will happen.
Hey man, I'm the biggest Chael Sonnen fan going, but you just have to watch this guy for a minute and you don't want to punch him in the face a little bit. Imagine being around him every day, all the time. You'd get some built up anger. The truth is, I think for almost any fighter, when asked, would you fight your teammate? If it's a teammate that you beat up in training, the answer is totally yes. If it's a teammate that beats you up in training, the answer is no. So I think it's safe to say that Henderson wins that fight, because otherwise he wouldn't be one.
The problem is that if you're looking for two guys to sell it, we know that Chael Sonnen runs his mouth, and that's one of the ways that he sells fights. If you're looking for Dan Henderson to do the same, that is not going to happen because Hollywood Henderson doesn't really... you know what, his talking is done inside the cage, as much of a cliche as that is.
It's hard to say because it's one thing if somebody insults you, you're going to get angry. But if your buddy Robin insults you, you might play along, right? I mean, your head doesn't look very good today, for example. I think you could have shaved it a little closer. See, you're laughing. When it's your friend, you can kind of get into it. So you never know. You might see that.
A fight just announced, Hector Lombard taking on Okami, and we know that Chael Sonnen mopped the floor with Okami. Now it's Hector Lombard's turn. If he has a great performance against Thunder, he could really throw his name into the hat to be a front runner to take on Anderson Silva for the middleweight title. And this is a fight that many people have been talking about over the last number of years, that Hector Lombard could be the best challenge for Anderson Silva.
Well, first, I mean, beating Okami with, the skill set that Lightning is bringing into the fight is tricky, because if you're Okami, you're sitting around right now with a whole bunch of money you just won fighting Alan Belcher, and people are going, you were really boring. Oh, man, I was really boring. Hey, you're about to fight Hector Lombard. Well, I better be boring again, because that's how you got to fight Hector Lombard, and that style, stifle him, put him against the fence, exhaust him, because we've seen Hector Lombard get tired before. All of those strategies, stay on top of him, remove the distance, make a man tired, that all works on Hector Lombard. This could be Okami's fight.
Of course, a lot of people criticized Hector Lombard for that first fight in the UFC, saying that he didn't live up to that hype, losing against Tim Boetsch. Tim Boetsch is a tough guy. And you talk about the octagon shock or the octagon jitters. People say it's real, and you have to believe, based on Lombard's performance against Palhares, that was real.
How much money did Hector Lombard make in that first fight?
$700,000.
Yeah, criticize away, man. That's a lot of dough. $700,000. You got to shake off whatever kind of jitters exist and go earn that money. And he didn't do that. So that criticism, I think, was warranted. But yes, he did look very good in his second fight. But I'm telling you, man, this Okami strategy, this kind of boring fight, we just saw him fight, and we've seen him fight a lot of times, tailor-made to beat a Hector Lombard.
Hector Lombard made $700,000 in his UFC debut. I think that Eddie Alvarez, a guy that was former Bellator lightweight champion, I don't think he's going to make $700,000 if he decides to go with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And we know right now Bellator has decided to sue Eddie Alvarez. It makes no sense. They both couldn't agree to contract terms. Eddie Alvarez said the UFC came back with a contract that Bellator didn't match it. They matched the monetary value, but not everything else that was on that contract. And I think that is a big factor for Eddie Alvarez.
Hey man, like math, contracts, stuff like that is just lame. But you got to educate yourself. When I was in the music business, managed some fighters, I've had to sign contracts of my own. So you got to learn this business. And when we were first talking about it, the word was that Bellator had offered something that wasn't as much as the UFC. But Bellator says they took the contract and they erased the UFC off the top, and they wrote Bellator in and gave it back to him. And now Alvarez's argument, I think, from paraphrasing what we've seen, is that the Bellator saying we will give you a percentage of pay-per-views is not worth anything because the UFC actually could give him that. Well, that's just too bad because that's in the contract. Sounds like Bellator will win this one. Fighters are freaking out, and rightly so, but it sounds like Bellator might win this one.
Yeah, I'm not sure because, there's so many things that the UFC can offer Eddie Alvarez that Bellator can't offer him. I think the biggest thing here is that Bellator is sending a message to their fighters and to their stars. Eddie Alvarez was one of their top draws. I just don't know if fighters are going to sign with Bellator knowing that they've treated Eddie Alvarez like this. If they treat him like this, they might treat other people like this.
Maybe. But it's just one fighter. So we'll have to wait and see. Time will tell. Thanks, guys. Okay, coming up this Friday night on Fight Network, we have one epic match between two legends. It's Alien versus Predator, and it gets started at 9 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss a minute of this thriller. And stay with us next on Fight News Now Extra as we take a look at how Strikeforce plans to make their exit this weekend.